Yeah, we have background information and statements.
Summarize, gist.
Summaries.
Yeah. What exactly is the central idea of this Mishnah?
The forms of Hitzah.
Okay.
Yeah. Two forms of Raisa, two forms of Rabban.
Give me the proper sequence of ideas.
You mean the statements, or just like in
No.
the summary of in the summary?
Remember, the Mishnah just has its statements. But remember, one of the ideas is called preliminary ideas.
Correct.
You need to start with a preliminary idea if that comes first.
All right.
Because you don't want to start in the middle. It seems like, well, why waste time? But it's not. Because what happens is the preliminary idea sets up the framework for what's about to happen. And the mind has to be prepared. And then all of a sudden you have the framework, and then you go right into the next concept. So all of a sudden it becomes very clear.
It comes even before the central idea of the Mishnah. The preliminary.
Yeah, because the central idea, remember, even a central idea has a preliminary idea.
Correct.
You know.
So
What's the first idea?
The first idea is Rishus. Domains.
Who?
Domains.
Oh, I see what you mean.
Yeah.
Okay. So you have a concept called what? Domains.
Correct.
Yes. Okay. Next idea.
The next idea is the definition of Hitzah, which is transferring from one domain to another.
Okay, so the next idea would be what? That there's a malacha. There's a forbidden activity, which means you cannot carry an object from one domain to the next.
Right.
So that would be the second thing.
And the third one is that it's a requirement for this Hitzah, for this melacha, which is that midaraisa, one person has to do the entire.
So I wouldn't go there.
I mean, like Kira Hanacha, you wouldn't.
No, because that's a
you wouldn't
condition.
go into that. Conditions.
Although
Okay.
that condition is very critical,
Okay.
but it's a condition.
So before conditions, I think that these are the two preliminary ideas. I mean, there's a Hitzah.
Okay, but the question is, what's the forbidden key point?
Forbidden key point of
Yeah,
Hitzah.
because that's very important. That is the malacha, is the forbidden key point.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Right. So
So the question then is Hitzah, which is taking an object from one domain, putting it in another, right?
right.
Okay, that's the activity, or that's an expression of a key point. What is the essential idea of the malacha? That would be idea 3. So what do you think it is? Remember what I said?
Transferring from one domain to another.
No. I mean, that's what it is.
But it's not the essential idea.
What's the key point, really? That really hits it on the target, on the nail on the head.
You said changing a property of the object, which is location.
Okay. That's what we thought. But when we realized it was something more,
Oh, it was harmony then.
that was the Havaman, yeah. That was, you're right, to change the location of an object in the sense of to create what's called a domain change. That's
Now I
true.
remember, but I forgot it. It was amazing. I forgot what it was. We found the same thing with the Erev Tafshil.
Yeah, well then, exactly, because then we realized that this forbidden key point really has an expression, manifestation in other areas of Shabbos. That was the value of this. You know what it was?
Changing the domain.
Yes, that's what we do. So first we realized, well, it's a domain change.
Right.
But then, okay, fine. But then we realized it was something deeper.
But if now that we forgot what we realized, then how do we arrive to this realization again? I mean, how to think about it?
Okay, so you'd arrive, right, at just thinking what could be involved in changing a domain. But what we really arrived at it when we realized that there's a fundamental, critical, essential condition.
Don't change an object's residence.
Oh, exactly.
No,
No, it's not don't change. Yeah, well, no.
Location. No.
Domain.
Domain.
The change of an object residence is domain.
But we just how is it different from what we just said a minute ago?
Which was what, location?
Which is a change of location, change of domain.
Location is one concept. It's located here. So we say, don't change the object's location. Fine. But what do you mean? I could change the object. Because remember, what is the action that takes place? It's what's called positional change. What you're really doing is changing position.
Right.
But obviously, if that was the case, you'd be chayav, you'd be forbidden to carry in Rishus HaYochid itself. Positional
So it's
change.
not just changing
So
location.
then we realized and said, no. Obviously, it can't be positional change. It has to be domain change. Because you need Shina Rishus.
Right.
So we realized that was the idea. You don't change the domain. So that's true. That's the concept of location. But then we encountered a very essential condition. The concept of akir and hanocho.
Yeah.
You know? So we realized, well, what's this akira business? Why do you have to be oiker something? So we realized, because when you oiker something, before the akira, it had fixed coordinates. It was located there. And then that's why, so an akira simply meant that it was stationary, and that fixes its coordinates in that domain. Therefore, you need the akira. Then we said, okay, then that's why you need the hanocha, because then it's located in that, you see.
Right.
So what precedes the akira is a fixing of its location. And when you have the hanocha, the consequence of the hanocha is you fix the location. Mm-hmm. So that we realize that. So that you're right. Don't change the object's location's domain. But then we realized, if you remember, I came back and said there's something even deeper than that. Because an object isn't just located there. It just happens to be there. No. Where an object is, in terms of its space-time, that's its residence.
It belongs there in a sense.
Its residence, it resides there.
But how do you switch
It's called its
from...
mokum.
How do you switch from what we just said to residing? I mean...
Well, because it's a greater understanding of the concept of location of an object.
I mean, it's more than domain. Residence
You
is more than
feel
domain.
it's a much greater malacha. You know, the Torah says don't change the location. Don't change the domain of the location. But the Torah says, hey, don't change the domain of the location, or don't change the domain of the object's residence. It's like getting kicked out of your house. You know, wait a minute, I live in now. An object obviously doesn't rent its
Right.
location, you know. But the concept of residence means it's there. It's a true mokum, you know. So then you can begin to feel it. That's a melocha.
It's maka. It's domain.
It's
domain.
It's domain's
residence.
residence.
Right.
The object has a residence, and that residence is in a domain, because that's the chiddush of domain. You see, so the Torah says, don't change the domain of the object's residence. So you realize that, so it's a much greater consequence, so to speak. You see, and once we realize that, then we realize tchumen. You know, when a person has, you can't walk. Remember, I said that. So you all of a sudden you realize tchumen is really an extension, or rather an expansion.
A person instead of object.
Yeah, there's an object has a residence and a person has a residence.
Right.
And that's why the business with food, you extend its residence.
Right.
You see? And that's truly a residence. Because that's his mekoimoi. So when it says, Ayetzi ishme mekoimoi, it means two concepts. Mekoimoi means the object's mekoimoi, that's the pasuk used for that. But also, mekoimoi is tchumen. So what tchumen does is it's a residence extension.
Right.
That's what a tchumen is. Or it's a residence boundary of which we can extend. And we do that by food, because what does food symbolize? Residence. Yeah. I eat there, hey, that means I eat where I live. You know? You see, by thinking deeper, what happens is you connect more dots.
What are we doing in the sukkah? We eat.
Well,
And we sleep too. Maybe
But it's more than that, because Teshuvah came to Duru.
Right. It's eating and sleeping.
and primarily it's eating.
Yeah, and the Torah doesn't say, by the way, you're located there.
No,
That's your residence, therefore you must sleep there.
Now we get a question.
See, which is first? The concept of residence or the concept I sleep there? When it says Teshu came to Duru, that means that Teshu is residing. It's not being there. It's a greater conceptual understanding.
We got a side question now.
Yeah.
What if instead of putting food there, he would put a bed?
A bed? Good question.
Now it's
It's a very good question. But you see, it's a valid question.
Right.
In other words, the real question is what? What's the criteria that creates a domain, residence?
Residence, yeah.
Is it food? What about bed?
And
You know?
it is definitely in halacha. Bed, we think where you slept the night before counts as much as where your food is. For legabe eruvin,
That's
legabe tchum.
there you are.
Uh-huh.
You see? But you're thinking in those terms because of the concept of residence.
Right.
So we now realize there's two isurim. There's an isur of hitzor on an object, and there's an isur of hitzor on a person. Wow, it's interesting. You know,
Right. It's the same Isser.
same isur in that, and they learn from the same person.
Right.
Al yetze ish mimkoimoi, which means with an object, or al yetze ish mimkoimoi by himself without an object. You can't walk. So we realize that, wait a minute, well, what do you mean? I cannot carry an object, but then what is the common denominator of all this? And the answer is domain, residence.
Just the term
Don't
residence is
change
different.
an object's
Yeah.
residence domain. You reside here, that's where you gotta stay. Don't move it to another, because obviously the concept of domain is a significant change. You see, domain is a significant change of residence.
In the fact, what you're saying is that the fact that it has to be fixed in the domain in order to be over on the malacha,
Yeah.
and then fixed in the other domain.
Well, because then it doesn't reside there.
Meaning fixed in a domain equals resides.
Well,
Resides there.
in other words, the significance of being fixed, which is why you have to nakir it to take it out of the fix, is the concept of residence. It's mokum as opposed to its matzav, or it's just situated there. Is it situated there, or does it reside there? You see? So, a lot of beautiful stuff comes out of this. Look at the expansion of ideas. I told you the concept of reduction. You want to reduce. You want to look at three halachas and realize it's really all the same principle. You know? That's
Right.
what you always try to do.
The generalization.
Yeah, so there's two concepts here. There's connecting the dots. And then there's reducing the dots. It's the same thing. Connecting the dots means what? What's the when you connect dots, what are you really doing?
Unity. We make one out of many.
But what are you doing? When you connect dots, what are you establishing?
Welcome back.
Hey, how you doing? Come on, you're missing good stuff.
That's right.
But we're just quickly reviewing the first Mishnah. So when you connect dots, what are you doing?
Synthesizing.
Who?
It's synthesis.
What's the nature of the synthesis? What's the nature of what connects the dots?
The relationship between.
Very good. Relationship. That's the concept of a structure. A structure is the relationships that exist between ideas, objects. Yes? But when you reduce, what are you doing? The difference between synthesis and reduction. See, what we did to this Mishnah is synthesis and reduction.
That's generalization more.
Who?
We find it's more generalization. We find the two things that really belong to one thing.
So what have you done?
In other words, we generalize two things. We show.
It's not generalization. I mean, it's true you generalize, but what have you done that makes it a what have you generalized?
We show.
So when you create a structure, you generalized the
It's
relationship.
not really. I mean, when we make the structure, we just connected. We created relation. We uncovered the relationship between things.
We uncovered
it's
the
not the same
relationship.
generalization.
But when you reduce, what do you uncover?
The main principle.
Who?
The main principle.
Common denominator, whatever. I don't know.
Yeah. In many ways, you've created what's called an identicality. They're really identical. It's not that the relationship, it's not a relationship of two independent objects. It's an identicality. They're identical. Hoitzo of an object and hoitzo of a person is the same identical idea. What is that?
Just different expressions.
Object resonance.
Change of object.
Yeah. Means don't go out of the, don't change the object residence of an object. That's hoitzo. Then tchumen is don't change your residence.
Correct.
It's identical.
Yeah.
The only thing different is the object. You see the difference? To reduce really means to create an identity or identicality. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
To structure is to create a relationship, both of which are true synthesis. So you have two types of synthesis. The concept of how do we relate things, and then the concept of how do I identify
We can reduce this
the
to.
verb for this, identicalize.
We can reduce this two
If there's
into
such a
one.
word, what?
We can reduce this two into one, really.
Yes.
Because it's just another relationship, which is identicality. That's a relationship too.
See, a structure doesn't reduce it into two, just keeps
Right.
it as two, but it expresses its relationship. You see,
What do you
but a
mean by
reduction,
express-
what was that?
What do you mean by express relationship?
Well, a structure like, what's the relationship between A and B?
I mean, that's
A
different.
is still different than B.
He's got black hair, he's got white
Yeah,
hair.
but they're
brothers.
both human,
Right.
so that's a relationship. You know what I'm saying? Right, it's almost a reduction. But anyway, but when we say that, that the concept of changing, the Torah says, I don't want you to change the object's residence domain. You see? And so really, I don't care what it applies to. It can be applied to an object, or it can apply to a person. That's, you've now made it as one. It's really one idea. You see? Except there's two different things we call one tchumen, and we call the other thing hoitzo. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. This is the essence of chokhmah. This isn't stam a nice idea. This is what chokhmah is all about. What is chokhmah in the end? Well, what's the purpose of chokhmah really? Certainly Torah is a chokhmah. In terms of how it, like the Ramchal says, Torah is a chokhmah, how it approaches the mind. Of course, Torah is connected to incredible kedusha, but in the end, the intellect understands Torah. You know what I'm saying? It still has to go through the intellect,
No, Chal says more than that, no?
What was that?
He says more than that. He says not just a chokhmah. He says it's you tapping into something. It's a earth melamala.
But that's the kedusha, that's the or, yeah. But the way it enters the mind is a chokhmah. It's very important. So the essence of what you want to do to a chokhmah, I told you, the two operations of the mind, to analyze and to synthesize, which means to connect. To analyze means to do what? To break down.
Breakdown. Yeah.
To synthesize means to connect dots. But there are two types of synthesis. There's the connecting the dots, which is the structure, and there's the reduction, where one and the other are really the same thing. You see? So that's a connection, but it's almost more essential. It's happened. This is what science does. In that sense, like I said, the greatest reduction probably of the 20th century is Einstein. E equals mc squared. It's not that energy relates to matter. Energy is matter, frozen. When energy is frozen, there's matter. So that's the greatest formula of all, in that sense, But what he did was the ultimate reduction, and that's really what you do in Torah. Because Chokhmah demands, understand me, break me down, but connect me to everything else. The Achdus. It's really what, in the end, you want to remove. What's the fundamental concept that the Rebbe Shalom implanted in the Bria, which we are trying to undo?
Ichud, ultimate.
Who?
Ichud. Harmony, Ichud.
Well, yeah, but what's the opposite? It's purut.
Period, right?
Yeah. Purut is a fundamental fabric, or the constant concept that pervades everything, is always pure. And we're always trying to remove the period. You see? So Torah is mufara. Torah is complete. The way it's presented to us is completely set. It's completely fragmented. We need to bring it together. This is the whole point of Chokhmah. Undo period. You know? This is the theory behind really what method does. You know? Not easy. So, we have a tzor. And the clue of this was that the Akir Hanocha, we realized it's got to be fixed. So when you oika something, it means you're taking it out of its fixing. And when you meniach, you're putting it into a fix. So the question is, what was fixed? So the first idea we had was location. It's fixed in that domain. Akira means that before the Akira, it was fixed in that domain. No? So when you're removing it, you're removing it from its location in the domain. You know what I'm saying? But then we felt there's something more than that. Just you're removing it from its location. You're really removing it from its residence. There's a difference between telling a guy, hey, get out of the park, or throwing a guy out of his house. Even though essentially you're telling him to move. You know? So really it's that concept of residence is a very important concept. And that's really what it seems to be. And it meshes beautifully with Tchumen, I'd say.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? That's it. And then, of course, the Mishnah is nothing more than what? So this is the most important thing to understand before you get to the Mishnah. One, the concept of a domain. The concept of an object's relationship with the domain. That it's not merely a location, it's a residence. And then the shinui of that, and that's the action, is the change of the object's residence. That's its change, you know. And then we say, fine, okay. So that's what I call the forbidden key point. Now we ask, what's the Mishnah all about? And the answer is, well, this change is forbidden. And what the Mishnah is all about is all the different forms of change. It's all about, you see? And that's where the Mishnah, okay, how many forms of change are there? And there was also how many types are there? You can have the forms, but the forms are which way are you going? Then there's the types.
How?
Hashota, you stretch.
Right.
Hitzor, you carry.
Zrika.
Zrika, you throw. Those are different types of hitzor. But there's only two forms, you know, and so on. You see?
Yeah.
And then we realize that what the Mishnah is about is what? It's about what are the forms of hitzor that are awesome in a Torah, and what are the forms of hitzor that are expansions of that, and that's midrabanan. So the Mishnah really is all the forms of hitzor, whether it be min Torah or whether it be midrabanan. You know? And then we realized what the Rabbanan did, that there's another essential condition. You know what I'm saying? One guy has to do the whole malacha.
The whole change of residence.
Yeah. Well, one guy has to do the whole malacha, which is
Yeah.
the change of residency. So in the Mishnah we had that you know, it's two guys here. So we realized, so the Chachamim said, I don't care if it's one guy or two guys, you know? So what the Chachamim did is they expanded that which was permitted because it lacked an essential condition. They expanded on that. You see, and they said, I don't care if it has two guys, it's awesome. Then we have to ask, okay, you know, let's expand which way, you know, and so on, you know. And then what the Mishnah does even more, makes it even more complicated. So not only is what's the hitzor form in Torah, and what is the hitzor form in Rabbanan, it even expanded more. It gave you the perspective from the standpoint of the guy lefnim and the guy b'chutz. And all it did is duplicated the halachas. It's exactly the same. Mm-hmm. All it is a difference of perspective, or which standpoint, you know. So that's why the Mishnah is so complicated. It looks so complicated because it's really hitting you with three things. One, the forms min Torah, the forms midrabanan, and then the forms from each guy's perspective.
Right.
There you are. That's the whole Mishnah. That is the entire Mishnah. See? Simple.
So preliminary comes way before central idea. That's
Learn to think in sequences. It's critical. People always fall because they don't think sequentially. They jump right in, and and they think, well, it's not a big deal. But they don't realize, no, you got to go back to the beginning. What was the first idea and the second, third? And that gives you the clarity. Why? Because it gives you the framework from which to understand the halach and the mishnah. Go back. It may seem simple, but that framework anchors you. It locates you. It's like a GPS. Tells you where you are.
so the preliminary information has to be in a sequence, the way you're saying it.
Exactly.
Right?
Yes.
So it has to follow an order.
It has to be a conceptual frame sequence.
I mean, is it possible that you're gonna have in preliminary information a bunch of different ideas that need to be known before you approach the Mishnah?
Sure.
Those ideas are not really related in themselves, but then the Mishnah is gonna talk. When the Mishnah is gonna bring its case, the Mishnah is gonna draw upon different concepts that are not related between each other. Meaning, in the preliminary information, are you always gonna have a sequence, an order, or are you gonna sometimes just have a bunch of ideas lined up, ready to stand for the?
Those ideas may not be related,
But
but they are necessary to understand what. Because remember, Rebbe did not write beginning ideas.
Right.
The Mishnah is intermediate ideas.
Obviously,
I don't want to use the word advanced.
He deliberately didn't do it, and that's why.
I mean, that's Rebbe. Whatever he did. Rebbe's Rebbe. That's it. But the important thing then, people make a mistake. The Mishnah has ideas which are preliminary to every halacha, and you need to go there first, and then go to the Mishnah. And so on. Like the first Mishnah in Shabbos. It should have said, Abari Shuyasan.
Right.
Actually, the three, whatever, Never did. It jumped in Noitzor. Noitzor is nothing more than an activity that presupposes the existence of domains. Or else there's no activity. What are you doing? But it never did. So Rebbe assumed that you know this. So. That's very important, yeah.
How about Chumash?
Yes.
Now you see, when you look at a pasuk,
Yes.
are there preliminary ideas to the pasuk also? Or?
Well, the first thing you need to do when you learn Chumash is, which area is it? There are 5 areas in Chumash. Or rather, any pasuk is connected to one of 5 areas. Right? What is the Chumash all about, really?
British Mess.
Who?
Remember what is
Who?
5 areas as in the
There are
Chumash
5 different areas that the Chumash involves itself with.
It's history.
Story, maybe.
Well, the
stories.
narrative, the story,
The story.
which is history.
Right.
Yeah.
But it's a narrative. So, am I learning a narrative about events? Is that what I'm learning? That's the first area. What's the second area?
You sort of a header?
Who?
Mitzvahs.
Who? Mitzvahs. Commandments. Tzivuyim.
Yeah.
Taryag. Are we into the area called mitzvahs? It's not narrative, it's mitzvahs. That's the second area. You know what I always say, because you remind me, what's the fastest way to learn Kol Torah Kula? I want to share this with you. And people make a mistake.
Sit down and do it.
No.
That's the worst.
What's the fastest way to learn Kol Torah Kula? I mean, not in all the details, but to go through the whole... What's the fastest way to see the scope of Kol Torah Kula?
Mishnah?
Tanakh.
Who?
Tanakh.
No, in Torah itself. Taryag mitzvahs. Do you realize if you just learn the Taryag mitzvahs, go straight through, but not lefi the chronology of it, which means which mitzvah and which parsha, like the chinuch. No. But like the Rambam presents the mitzvahs. Yes? Those are conceptually connected. Like all the mitzvahs of Pesach. Chometz, matzah, bayiro, Then there's a Korban Pesach, you know what I'm saying?
It's a lot. It's a
Cool.
lot of mitzvahs. I did it Shavuos time.
Whatever it is, but you realize you've seen every commandment of God. That's what it is. Not bad view. People should do that. They don't do that. It's a massive database to go through the Taryag mitzvahs. And in many forms written just on the Taryag mitzvahs.
Yeah.
The Chinuch is classic. There's all kinds of svarim.
Down to the Taryag foundation.
Yeah, I hold everybody. That's the first thing they should learn. You have a kid, right? You have a kid, right? Every Shabbos, 2 mitzvahs. And you go through it with them. But do it according to the Rambam, because then you have, first you tell a kid, okay, the concept of a tzivui, the concept of loisas and aseh, 2 different forms of a tzivui. Then let's begin. Okay, and you can do the moedim first. What are all the mitzvahs connected with Shabbos? Pesach, Sukkot, and you go Kochim, Taras, and the kid gets incredible scope. He sits down and he knows every mitzvah. He doesn't know the details. Which sefer discusses the details? Mishnayos. Mishnayos is nothing more than the details of all the Taryag mitzvahs. That's really what it is. That's a massive database. Massive. And in the end, that's what you want. You want a guy to master the database. Simple. Yeah.
So we have other 3 areas.
Yeah. So we have narrative, we have mitzvahs, we have who?
That's all.
No. Midas. You learn Midas from the Torah. You take a look at how the others behaved. What?
It's a little drushes.
That's not a drasha. The narrative is there many times to tell you the midas. What do you learn? You learn the midah of chesed, gvura. There are a lot of midas you learn from the narrative of the gedolim.
Or from Hashem.
Who?
Or from Hashem. Temper.
Yeah, midas. Tikkun midas. That's the 3rd area.
That's it.
What?
That's it.
No. No. There's 2 more. No. Don't cut out so quick. The 4th area is the avodah. How to serve God. The avodah.
It's not a mitzvah?
What?
It's not part of the mitzvahs?
Well, ubay sidbak, for instance. It's a mitzvah, but it's the avodah. It's not being a chatas. You know what I'm saying? It's a specific thing. We're tefillin. Then there's mitzvahs which are part of the avodah. How I serve God. You know what I'm saying? It's the avodah itself.
Could you give one?
Vekas. Who?
Could you give some?
Tefillah. Yeah, I'll give you examples. It's the avodah. When Moshe Rabbeinu did something, let's say he argued for Klal Yisrael, it was an avodah. Or Moshe Rabbeinu had an Nisayon by the rock. So what's that about? It's a narrative, but that narrative teaches you, maybe not to get angry or whatever, but it teaches you the avodah of what was not right in what he did. You know what I'm saying?
So avodah you will take it as a separate category, which is not going to fall into, meaning every single mitzvah you're going to hit is not going to be avodah.
Yeah, there are many mitzvahs that are not avodah, taras, kochim. That's not, every mitzvah theoretically is an avodah, that's true. But then there's the path. It's like the Mesilas Yesharim, It's the path of the avodah, or the levels of the avodah. So that would be the 4th area.
It's certain categories of mitzvahs. It's not all mitzvahs. Avodah is going to be just the ones that are directly involved in a person's connection to Hashem. I mean,
it's like, let's have Avraham Avinu when those malachim came.
Right.
He ran. What is that?
That's midas.
Could be midas.
Right.
Also could be avodah.
Right.
Certainly was a midah of Hakmas Sorochem.
Right.
But it's also an avodah. You see, it's like, it's not a mitzvah. It doesn't say, but from Avraham Avinu's behavior, we learn what to do. How to serve God, and so on. Anyway, Separate category.
Number 5.
Who?
Number 5.
Number 5 is the real deep stuff. What is the fundamental principle of history?
Tikkun.
Who?
Tikkun.
Very good.
After so much shiurim, I have to say.
The fundamental
You watch a lot
movement.
of YouTubes and you're away. Yeah. I said you watch a lot of YouTubes and you was away. Yeah.
The fundamental, people don't realize this. The fundamental mover, cause of all history is the tikkun process. Everything has to contribute to the tikkun of the Bria. Everything. Every nisoyan, every event, every catastrophe, every calamity, every shibud, every golus. Every golus, right? What determines history? What determines Jewish history? What determines, it's called a determinant. I want to get a fancy word. What is the primary determinant of history? Whether it be Jewish history or secular history, it doesn't make a difference. The answer is, it has to be part of the tikkun process, or it would never happen. You see what I'm saying?
And
It
we're
either
supposed
has
be
to
figuring
rectify
out-
something immediately, or it has to rectify something that was failed, and now you have to have it. Purim,
Second chance.
second chance. Purim is a rectification of a failed attempt. Is it not? So is Hanukkah. So is the God of Pesach.
Same, but
You know what I'm saying?
you look back at history, you say, "Behali kashi l'Rachman Lamli."
Who?
You say, "Behali kashi l'Rachman Lamli." Well, you know, don't get involved in Hashem's plan.
No, so that's Hashkafa. That's a study of, Hashkafa. First you have to understand the divine plan. I mean, if you don't understand this area, you need to understand the divine plan. The whole concept of a tikkun, what is it? That this is a divine agenda. That the Bria has to have a tikkun. First you have to understand the architectural plans of the Bria. Then we go into the actual progression. Okay, how was it accomplished? So you can actually look from the beginning, Bereshit Bara Elokim, up to 2013. You can explain every single event of man and every single event of an individual. There's a national tikkun process and there is a personal tikkun process. What do you think determines who you are, where you are? What determines this? If you're sick, rich, right? Matzliach.
You're gonna tell
What
us now?
determines that? What?
You're gonna tell us the secret now?
I'm going to tell you the determinant. What determines your... What's the determinant of... What's the
What
determinant of
determines-
your personal life?
You
You
want
ever
to say
asked
what
that?
determines my wife's mood?
Your wife's mood?
To be specific.
I told you the
Something
joke.
you don't understand.
I told you the
I
joke.
remember that, yeah.
I told you the joke about the genie.
Yeah.
Yeah? Even a genie couldn't answer that. Don't ask me. I was still trying to figure out my own
The,
life.
the determinant is definitely
But listen,
the determinant has to do with the general history. No. I mean, it's
general
connected to the
history
general history.
is the ongoing progression toward tikkun.
Right.
But there's two dinim of tikkun. There's a national tikkun, which is the Bria, Klal Yisrael as a unit, and then there's your own.
Part in the tikkun.
Yeah, because we live once and we fail. We do chatoim, averis, right? And we got to come back, right? We got to come back again to redo it, Gilgul and all that. That's the saga of the neshamas.
Right.
That's the saga of the neshamas. But it's our personal tikkun as opposed to the national tikkun or the cosmic tikkun, whatever, and so on. But those are the determinants of all events. That already is much harder to figure out. But
Yeah.
Chumash, is it that? No, you can. There's a lot to talk about.
You need Nevi'im to tell you this.
No, you're in the Nevi'im. Ramchal talks about that. The Maharal, people talk about that. You know what I'm saying?
Kabbalah is not unattainable. That's basically.
Yeah,
There are Gedolim that talk about that. Why this happened and so on. You know.
Say you can't start getting involved in machlokes Ramban and Rambam why exactly Moshe Rabbeinu was punished for whatever.
But they talk about this.
Yeah.
They identify what was
They
the
were
head.
holding there.
Well, that's the concept of the tikkun process. That's obviously much more esoteric. It's much more concealed. But I'm just saying it's another area of Torah. That's all. So there are 5 areas of Torah. When you learn Chumash, which area are you in? Are you into narrative? Are you into Taryag? Are you into Tikkun Hamidus? Are you into Avodah? Or are you into the Tikkun process? You know what I'm saying?
So each posuk can be understood on these 5 levels, probably.
Well, then once you've identified the area, then you need to organize it. That's all.
But not every person has a mitzvah.
Anyway,
Yeah.
so we have now figured out the Mishnah, first Mishnah.
Right. We have the preliminary information. We know where it's coming from. It's coming from Hitzah. I mean, it's coming from domains and the Melach of Hitzah.
Yeah, so the Mishnah really has 3 different, aspects. The first aspect is forms of Hitzah. Hello? Yes? The Mishnah has 1. What are the forms of Hitzah Minatera? What are the forms of Hitzah Midrabanan? And what are the forms of Hitzah from the standpoint of a Bifnim and Bachotz? That's it. It's all Mishnah.
Right.
You see? But from that, we've gotten a tremendous amount of Yesodis about Hitzah, Then there's also how many Rishuyas are there. You remember I told you?
Yeah.
How many Rishuyas really are there? So on, And the criteria for each Rishus. They started Erevin yesterday, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, listen, that's...
What the same?
They started Erevin, Daf Yomi. Okay. So, we're up to the second Mishnah.
Second Mishnah.
That's it. Okay. Who's on? Who's saying it?
We bring him back in. He doesn't know what he's missing. Meaning, how do we approach the Mishnah?
We don't know what the halakha is. Then we can ask what's the preliminary. We can't have preliminary ideas if we don't know what the halakha is.
And when we say what's the first halacha, we're asking what's the first.
What it says?
I'm sorry.
What it says? What it says?
What does the Mishnah say? Specific.
say?
What specific case is it talking about?
Exactly.
Just,
what's the case?
what's the
Yeah,
case?
Exactly.
Right.
And then we can ask, okay, what do I have to assume first before this case?
What's the
Let me get it
generalization of the
clearly.
case?
We're not into organizing it.
Exactly.
And look, in the end, you just have to learn the halachas, and then as you begin to learn, you try to put it together and see the common denominator and so on,
Right. So now
So-
we're getting like first approach, first time. we see
Because the
a
Mishnah doesn't tell us, what the central idea is, what the preliminary is. All it does is presents cases and their conducts. That's all it does. We need to unravel the mystery. It's like a jigsaw puzzle. Here's a piece. What do I do with it? Well, give me the next piece. I try to put it together, but all we have is pieces.
Askell came up with the Reisman, you saw?
Yeah.
The mishnayos Shabbos in Hebrew.
How is that different than...
Then Yad Avram.
Yeah.
It is very different.
Was it more lumdus? Is that what it is?
I'm not sure. I didn't
I'm not
compare them
clear about why they felt it was necessary.
because they started with Shabbos, right?
Yes. Okay, but...
And now they went straight to Shabbos.
No, they did brachas too.
Oh, they brachas also.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we're gonna have to compare a little bit.
So the question is it the same work, different work?
It's not the same word for sure. It's different people who wrote it.
No, I don't care
Right.
about who wrote it. The question is
What kind?
what's it doing that's different? What ideas does it provide that is different or that the first one didn't provide? That is the question.
I feel after Siyata Dishmaya, nothing else to
The what?
After Siyata Dishmaya mishnayos,
Oh,
nothing else can be.
But they don't have it on Shabbos yet.
he doesn't have it on Shabbos.
Doesn't have
Yeah.
No. But even Siyata Dishma is not perfect. None of them are perfect. But it's good. It's very good. It's best. Maybe the Reisman edition is trying to compete with that. No idea.
Gotta check into it.
Why Rajan?
Huh?
Who's Rajan?
No, Reisman is the person who pays. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, he's the sponsor of
Yeah.
the project. So what do we have? What's the first halacha?
The first halacha is
Yeah.
Not to sit by a barber before mincha.
Okay.
That's the case. Yeah.
Barbershop.
Unless he prays first, and then he can sit by the barber.
Yeah.
Yes?
Pray before sitting by the barber.
Then you gotta pray that they give you a good haircut. You gotta wonder about that, you know.
Sounds very dramatic.
It's a commentary on the barbers of those days, huh? Well, okay, so come on, what do we do with this halacha? The halacha seems to be clear, right?
Very clear.
Don't take a haircut until you daven mincha. You want to take a haircut? Pray mincha first, then take a haircut. What do we do with this?
So first of all, we have to understand like what's a haircut. Is it a
What's a
haircut only,
haircut?
or anything else?
I know.
Is it dafka by mincha or by any other?
No, you don't do that first. No, you're going for other parameters. No, that's not the first thing you do.
So the why?
Not why. What does it say? Analyze the case. What does it say exactly?
The person comes to the
In a
barbershop.
general way.
Mm-hmm.
So what does it say?
Just don't start an activity before a mitzvah's manis.
Go ahead.
Once the is close.
When you're close to that zman, well, obviously. And the why is because you may get involved with this activity or a related activity and miss the zman of the mitzvah.
Good. So, one, if there's a mitzvah that has a deadline or timeline, a deadline,
Yeah.
that's the first important area. Yes?
It's called mitzvah's manis.
Mitzvah's manas, which means it has a time deadline.
Yeah.
Right? Past that, there's no mitzvah. That's the first idea. Second idea, right? You do not want to. There are things that can distract you from the mitzvah.
They could be prolonged more than you expected them to.
We don't know what it is, but there are clearly activities that can distract you from that mitzvah.
Right.
That would be number two. Number three, what is the criteria, or one of the activities is what? Is going to a barber. Why? What is the criteria of that type of activity that will distract you from doing the mitzvah? That would be the third idea.
Criteria is very simple. Criteria is that
Yeah,
you're going to prolong more than you. These activities are unpredictable, basically. You can't predict how long they're going to take.
So therefore,
they could take more, and they will distract you from there.
so therefore, they consume a lot of time.
They can. They don't have to, but they unpredictably can happen.
That's all I care about. They can. It's very possible that they
Yeah.
consume a lot of time.
Unpredictably.
Yeah. Okay.
No, because if I plan for half an hour, plan for half an hour, it's gonna be 3 hours. If not, I could schedule from here to here. I have cut till here, mincha. That's all.
Yeah, but they're time consuming. That's number three,
Yeah.
right? So we have a mitzvah which is timed, has a time delay, it has a deadline. That's number one, and it is possible, right, to distract yourself and therefore not do the mitzvah. That's number two. Number three, what are those things that can do it? So the answer is specific activities. One of them is going to a barber, and therefore
Therefore, don't start.
Therefore, you cannot do this activity, which will distract the performance of a mitzvah that has a deadline. That's the general statement. Now, the Mishnah gives the expression, or rather, he gives you an illustration. Right? The illustration is mincha, right? And the activity, the concept of mincha, the concept of it's possible to get distracted, right? And then there's the activity that will do the distraction. Those are three ideas: mitzvah, possibility of distraction, and therefore the avoidance of that activity.
Yeah.
That's really the general formula for this Mishnah. The avoidance of that activity that can distract doing a mitzvah that is timed, that has a deadline. Now, next thing we go. I'm just showing you, we've
like
now
what
generalized the formula.
Yeah.
We're no longer into barber and mincha. We're into time sensitive mitzvahs, possibilities of distraction, and the avoidance of those. That's it. Those are the three fundamental ideas of this first case. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
See? Simple. Now, once we have that, let's take a look. Okay, so mincha is the time-sensitive mitzvah. Yes?
Mm-hmm.
So then the question, of course, is, there's mincha gdoila, mincha ktana, so you go into more details.
Right.
Which one is it? Mincha gdoila, obviously, is what? And mincha ktana, we're talking about mincha, so mincha gdoila is much more, is time-sensitive. Mincha overall is time sensitive, but it's obviously not as time sensitive as mincha gdoila.
Katana, you mean?
Mincha katana, because you have the whole afternoon.
9.5 hours. Yeah.
So we begin to fill in the details. Which mincha are we talking about?
Yeah.
Right? Then the second concept is, it's got to be obviously a distracting element. So the third idea is, okay, we need to avoid the activities. Which activities? But what we really want to do is, don't tell me a barber. Why a barber? What is the criteria of those activities which must be avoided? So the answer to that is,
It is possible.
there's a real possibility that they are time involved. They involve a lot of time. That's number one. Yes? But there's something else about taking a haircut.
You're gonna want to finish it. Meaning the fact that it takes time, you may say, okay, let me interrupt and go diving. By barber, you can't do that. If you're in the middle of a haircut, you have to finish it in order to do what you need to do.
So therefore, in a certain sense,
It takes your attention.
they're very intense.
Yeah.
They're intense.
You're
So
very involved.
They're involved. That's the word for it. They're involved. It's an activity involvement. So there's a concept that the time is extensive time, and involvement, heavy involvement in the activity, which will easily make you forget. So those are the two fundamental criteria. So now we understand why they picked the barber. Because it takes time. Although you have to understand, I don't want to take time anyway for a haircut.
They may break.
But so therefore, what they're worried about is not the length of time taking a haircut. They're worried about scissors may break. The guy's got to repair it.
Right.
You got to wait around till he repairs it. This kind of stuff. So that's the possibility. And also that itself is intense. It's very involved. To fix that, you get so involved in fixing something. Bam. So we have two fundamental requirements or criteria of what defines the activity which has to be avoided. You see? So we now understand the first what do you call it, halacha.
Yes. Right.
We understand its general formula or rule.
Now I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I don't know. Now we understand them all. All the cases like this.
Exactly.
So it's
Lines
all
up the whole thing.
Production.
So we have to understand what the differences are between every case. That's where it's
Well,
okay
each
to
case
define.
will introduce
New
another activity. That's all they do.
But in saying it's just like another activity, or it's another type of activity.
It has to be additional point in each.
Well,
case.
what's the next one?
So the next one is going to be don't go into a merchatz. Don't go into a bathhouse.
But before we do that, there are certain other considerations. Even before we get that, you see, you could take all this out of one mission. What?
Right.
You voted for me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Give me a cup.
Probably want to get it.
He did?
I don't know. Like,
I'll get
But there are other considerations because you want to look at all the possible categories of this. So we have the general formula: time-sensitive mitzvah, distraction is 2, and activities which must be avoided because they can lead to distraction. So they're called distracted activities, distraction activities. That's number 3. You see what I'm saying?
one classic case was checking your email before starting the daven.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, there you are. So that's the question. You need to apply the criteria.
Right.
Well, what's the mitzvah? Mincha?
Mincha. Back to mincha. Yeah.
Okay. Distraction. So is this a distraction activity?
Right.
Right? So therefore we have 2 criteria for that. It has to be lengthy, 400 emails,
And involved.
and you get involved because, well, what do you
that's
really
not the
say?
point, though.
What?
Once you open up one, that could lead you to who knows where.
Yeah.
A guy sends you an
It's like
email.
lengthy.
Well, you want to
Can
respond.
You do this and this and
You
that.
want to respond to the email because maybe it's important, and I got to respond now because maybe something happened with my business, and bam, there's the time involvement. You know, so it's time consuming, and it's time, and it's involved, time involved. So you have the 2 basic things. See, once we've taken the case and we've got it down to its general structure,
Right.
its general framework, you know what I'm saying? We can now ask, okay, you know, and we understand the criteria for the activity, time involvement and time consuming, then we can now go, we have a, you know, whole path. Okay. And that was a good case, email.
So tomorrow, 1 o'clock, you're not going to look at your emails?
I don't have emails.
So,
I never bought
it's
email.
lucky enough.
Smart man.
I don't have
I mean, I think the other
But
consideration.
there's other, because that's the case.
What's before mincha? Right?
So the Mishnah says, Ad Shispal.
Right.
But we have to ask another question. Well, what happens if you started this before the Zman of Mincha?
Or you started after the zman.
Or you started after the Zman of Mincha? So what's the halacha? What happens if you start before? So the question then is what? Do you have to be mafsik?
It's the 5th statement in the Mishnah.
But you hear it, but you can figure all this out in the first case by thinking. You don't have to wait till, oh, it's a halacha of mafsik. No. You see what I'm saying? Thank you. Wow. You hear the thought?
No.
It's a matter of thinking. I realize thinking takes time and energy. But you hit all the ideas by yourself. And you are prepared. And you are prepared. When you see immediately, oh, they're talking about, you know, b'diavad. Do I have to be mafsik? That's what they're talking about, you know? You hear the thought?
He agrees on the email.
It happened to me.
You forgot what, Mincha? Or you forgot Shabbos?
For Shabbos, my wife made sure that I did it. I didn't have it for Mincha, yeah. My wife thought I done Mincha already.
Oh, so there are two categories in that. Right. So we see the general structure of that first halacha. 1. What's the time-sensitive mitzvah? 1. 2.
What's
The concept
distraction?
is distraction connected to
You can't
this.
call somebody on the phone before Mincha because they could tell you something.
Wait. And number 3, which activities are distracting? The distraction activities, right? So we now understand there are 3 aspects to this halacha.
I don't understand the second and third. I'm sorry.
What?
Second and third is a little vague in my mind. The first is there's a mitzvah.
A time-sensitive mitzvah. 1.
Means deadline.
That's a deadline. 2. Are there distractions? Can this mitzvah be distracted from? Is it possible?
Any time-sensitive mitzvah, in theory,
Yeah.
could have a distraction if you're involved with a time-involved activity.
We don't know. What about the Beis Hamikdash? There's a mitzvah in the Beis Hamikdash. Can that be distracted from?
I think why not?
I'm just saying.
So you have a korban, for example, a korban tummy, like you have to.
But
bring
it's what's called an area of concern.
Yeah.
It has to be able to be pushed aside. Distractibility has to be possible.
Yeah, in practical terms.
Yes, as an area
Okay.
of concern.
So we're not going to focus much on it. Meaning,
Not yet.
most of the time, okay.
The first thing we're doing is
Like what-
analyzing the case and trying to understand it generally.
That for Shabbos it's not shiur. Nobody's gonna miss Shabbos because of
Yeah, plenty of exeris that you're gonna forget to the Shabbos.
Sure.
Forget
Yeah,
Shabbos.
of course. Sure, many. That's the whole. But there's a second concept, the concept of, is this mitzvah, the concept of distractibility. Can it be distracted from?
Mm-hmm.
The third concept is, which activities will distract? That's number 3. Number 4. What's number 4?
3.
We have 3 so far. But we want to generate more concerns or more categories. Remember, we're analyzing this. What's another category of this? Other remedies. Other remedies.
yeah, don't do it.
No, that's not a remedy. That's the halacha.
And-
But maybe if I assign a person
Oh,
to remind me,
or alarm clock or whatever.
or I have a shomer, is that a remedy that's halachically okay? And therefore I can engage, right? Because even if I get distracted, I have somebody who's not involved in that who will remind me. That's number 4. You see, that's a halachic possibility. Are there remedies? Which means I can get involved in a distracting activity, even though it will distract me, possibly, and I won't do the mitzvah, but there's a condition, there's a remedy. You see what I'm saying? That's number 4. Number 5. This is all just thinking about it. What happens if I begin before the mitzvah starts? Do I have to be mafsik? Or Chazal said, once mincha begins, then you can't do it. And if you do it,
Why wouldn't you have to be mafsik? I understand that's the case, but why not? Why not?
lav dafka.
No, but what's
Could be lechatchila, but b'diavad, if you began doing something before the chalos of the mitzvah, continue. V'rak goyzeh. It's only mincha started, now you can't. So the halach is, what do you have to do? But what happens before the mincha started? So that's a fifth category of concern.
You've never done anything by yourself.
Who?
You've never done anything by yourself in a sense.
What do you mean? I don't see what you mean.
Well, if you started before,
Yeah.
so it means you didn't do. If you started when it's too late already to start.
The question is, if you started before the chiv of the mitzvah,
Yeah.
maybe you started okay. You started before, you started legitimately before. There wasn't a problem starting it before, because there's no chiv to say mincha. So the question is, now mincha comes, is the gzera still active? Is the gzera still
Does it
here?
apply when you're in the middle of something, basically?
What was that?
Does it apply when you're in the middle already?
Well, yeah, but it's not just the middle. You did it before the chiyuv started.
No, but you keep.
Or
doing
you
it.
can say,
You keep doing it.
well, what happens if you started? You made a mistake. You sat down by the barber, you forgot about the halacha, so can you sit? So that's also part of it. In other words, you know what I'm saying?
Or the guys done. I sat down
Or
with
not.
my barber because I'm in the mood. Okay.
Well, so we have 4 considerations of that halacha. Just by thinking about the halacha, we've created the areas of concern. 1, it's a time-sensitive mitzvah. 1. 2, is it distractible? 2. 3, what are the distracting activities? 3. 4, what are the remedies? Maybe if I do certain things, I'm not worried about this. Like I said, I point to Shema. You know what I'm saying? That's number 4. Number 5, what happens if I begin the distracting activity before the chiyuv begins? Do I have to be mafsik? Number 6, what happens if I forgot and I began the distracting after the chiyuv? So it's 6 b'diavad. So there you look at it, just by one halacha on the first mishnah or the first 4 halacha, we would have got 6 We understand the general structure of the case, and we have all the areas of concern. Why is it so beautiful and valuable? Because we now know what to look for.
Now what are we going to do? It's going to...
Well, now we're going to see. In other words, we've already got our questions formulated. We don't... Look, we don't want the Mishnah to in other words, there's a saying, chance favors the prepared mind. Means if you're prepared and you got the categories and you see the answer, you're prepared and you'll know it's an answer because you've already formulated the question. But if you didn't formulate a question, it's very easy not to see this as an answer. You see what I'm saying? So we've got 6 ideas on the first case. Well, I didn't get in the second case. You hear the word?
Yeah.
So what do you say, guys?
Well, the second case and the third, the other cases are all going to be extensions of.
Well, that's the beauty of it, because we've already formalized.
We made it actually before.
We made a generic.
That's right, generalization, generic.
And they're all going to fit in under one of 2 categories.
Exactly. Now, so we already have that relation. So we know sapor is a distracting activity for mincha, which can be distracted. We don't know, however, a remedy. We don't know if you started before mincha, and we don't know if you made a mistake and started after mincha, so what's b'diavad? We don't have answered the 3 questions, but we do have the idea of those first 3. Now, lo yikonos odom, we get there in a second halacha. Lemerchatz. Stop. Right? Don't go into a merchatz bathhouse. Okay. What's the activity? Which is the mitzvah? Doesn't say.
Mincha.
It does.
Lo yikonos odom lemerchatz.
Actually, spell.
No.
After the list, there's a list of 4 things.
Well, no, it never says that. It does not weigh the word mincha.
It's the same thing. So,
okay.
the question is why don't we say samach mincha after all those 4 cases? Meaning, why do we say samach mincha after the first?
Because that's the style of the Mishnah. Many times the Mishnah will give v'chein, 1 word, and that's the whole case. We need to recognize and independently analyze the case. Don't, a lot of guys just, no, it's a case. Let's think about the case.
Well, many say that the other cases apply to all tefillas, meaning sapar is only for mincha.
Only the Rambam.
The Rambam said.
Right.
That's where Samaya shines.
Well, that was part of our consideration. Which mitzvah are we talking? Which time-sensitive mitzvah?
Well, it should be any time sensitive mitzvah.
Well, that we have our formula. You see, now in the formula itself, we can actually ask all these questions.
Yeah.
Which mitzvah is it distractible? You know what I'm saying? And what are the distracting events? You know what I'm saying? Because that's really what we're talking about. And then from that, we formulate a principle here. The Chazal say a time-sensitive mitzvah, which can be distracted. It's distractible, right? There are activities, distracting activities, which you cannot initiate. You see. So we already have a formula, which is very important. So that's why your questions about email is Givaldi. It's a Givaldi, all of a sudden it's Friday. What?
That's Reese's question.
Whatever it is, but it's a Givaldi idea, because email. You look at an email, right? And all of a sudden, you want to answer the email because the guy asked you, well, what should I, and bam. And then you look at the next email, till you get out of it, you emailed, you plastered to the wall with emails.
A few days ago, I was working with real estate from Eretz Israel.
Yeah.
And by then, it was Erev Shabbos, whatever. And I'm trying to, I sent email. My husband doesn't allow me to see email, whatever I said before. With certain time no, absolutely not. Impossible.
Yeah.
So they bedavka, they will not do it. Actually, 2 people, I encountered 2 people who are.
Yeah, so what was the time-sensitive mitzvah?
Shabbos.
Shabbos, not mincha.
Yeah, no.
So again, we need to identify, right? Is it distractible? Yeah, you forget it's Shabbos, right? And the third idea is, what's the activity that's distracting? What's a distracting activity? In your case, what was it? Email. And what's the criteria for distracting activity? Right? What's the criteria for what activities distract? I remember I said
It
it.
has the potential.
Who? What's the criteria? Not every activity he's going to do that.
Potential
Well, I can't do a thing.
Potential be extended.
Who?
It takes time, and
That it's time consuming.
It's not time consuming by itself.
Involvement.
It can become consuming unexpectedly.
Fine.
That's point.
That's okay.
Right.
That's good. That's okay. Either it is time consuming or it can be unpredictably time consuming.
Right.
Either one. But the concept of it's time consuming, either in potential or in actual. Fine. And what's the second criteria for a distracting activity?
involvement.
Involvement. This is not a mitzvah where it's like, you get involved. You really get into it, and that, you know what I'm saying?
You know what remedy she found? It's
Who?
very interesting. What remedy she found?
Remedy?
Remedy, yeah.
Who?
That's real estate agent. Whatever. She called her brother and she said, please log into my email, because he doesn't hold this Humra, and read to me email from this person.
Okay. So
It's remedy because
she was doing is preventing herself from getting involved in all the other emails.
exactly. No, I just realized.
Because that's what she felt that was the
At
distracting.
that point I laughed, but now I realize it's a lot of chokhmah because she called her brother, he looked at exactly but that email.
And that was it.
So what do you mean? Why can't you just open the mail? And no, that's
Yeah.
the
Because once you look at email, you don't stop. It's like you got guy that's 400 emails, and he's going to look which ones are important that require immediate attention. It's over with, Yeah. But look at the difference when you understand the general structure of, and we get this just from thinking.
We asked
We
her
don't have any
before,
fortune yet. What?
we asked her before, Shamataka. You said if it is something that could get a person, what's it called again?
Distracted. Distracting
involved,
activity.
and he'll end up missing Mechadaka. Then it doesn't.
Well, then what he's doing is not telling you yes or no. He's just giving you.
Yeah, because he doesn't know.
We know
what
that
he's
if it's
saying.
distracting. The real question is email distracting? That was the
No,
question.
but that he
put
doesn't
an alarm
know.
clock on your phone.
Well, what's the big deal? Anybody can figure out if email's distracting. It's very distracting.
He said
That's why I don't have email.
He said if you get an alert on your phone that it's Zman Mincha,
No, it's not going to help.
then it's not a problem.
No,
Well, that's a remedy.
He doesn't know what email is.
Well, that's the question.
That's a big chiddush.
Nah,
Not that a
you-
shayman works, but that counts as a shayman in today's day and age when you have so many things buzzing. You have one phone call, you get 4 text messages, 2 emails, you ignore all of them because it's one phone call. Now, one of them says mincha on it. Come on. No, I'm serious.
Alarm clock.
But anyway-
yes, alarm clock, yes.
What I've done is I've created a 6-point areas.
Still have chonos.
Just havchanas, yes, 6 havchanas, which is very important. And now we go loikonos adam lemerchatz. So now, don't take anything for granted. What's the mitzvah?
And according to Rambam, it's according to everyone.
Mincha.
All the mitzvahs.
Mincha.
No, all the tefills. Not definitely Mincha.
That's only going to the Rambam.
No, only the Rambam says that the first one is definitely Mincha. Everybody
Well,
else says
Pashtus-
all tefillos.
I mean,
At the end of the Mishnah, is going to throw the Kriyashma into the fray.
but that's already, we'll get to that, It's a
No, but
different,
that's an indication that the ratio of the Mishnah is talking about more than just tefillah.
Sorry?
No, because there is a full five.
No?
Rambam says by Sapar, there's no chash by shach. He's married. It's only by Mincha is a chash. That's what Rambam says.
So the merchatz minimally has to be talking about mincha. 2, merchatz,
Right.
mincha is distractible, we know that. Number 3, what do you call it? Merchatz is a distracting activity.
Continue.
You get undressed, you take the bath, and not only that, if you're really exhausted, it depends what kind of, bath. A sauna, you sit there for 2 hours in the sauna.
The Shema is
You know what I'm saying?
Aleph.
What?
Shema is Aleph.
Oh, okay, so maybe you'll faint. Okay, so the Mishnah felt that fainting is the problem, not because you're going to relax and sit there for 2 hours,
These days, relaxation is not a problem. I've never seen anybody faint.
That's a chiddush. It's something yourself is a problem because then you're safer by in this.
Oh, it's tremendous. Tremendous what you bring up.
Say again?
He's saying, what's the problem with Shema is Aleph?
What's the problem?
What's the problem? Shema is Aleph. I mean, it's like you can be honest if you happen to be this Aleph.
Shemi is
No, because it was very
No. You're not an oinus if you know you can faint.
Right.
What are you doing entering the situation where you become an onus?
No, that's common enough. Not just
the mazid. The mazid is that you've entered a situation where you become an onus.
Become an honest.
You made yourself.
Well, there's a whole halach of what maschin tchilasei b'shoigeg, and you know what do you call it? It's soifer b'mazid.
Yeah, you're allowed to drink.
So you know what I'm saying?
Are you allowed to drink wine in large quantities where you may become drunk?
Yeah.
And then not happen. Right.
Yeah, so that's not called. I mean, it's an onus, but that's not the, you know. But anyway, so we go through the same formula. What's the mitzvah? Is it distractible? What's a distracting event? Is the bathhouse? And then does it have the criteria? It's time consuming. Because if you faint, clearly it's time consuming. Obviously, you know. And it's also involved because you're out.
Yeah,
you're unconscious. So you're very involved in being unconscious. There you are, meets all the criteria. But again, is there a remedy? What happens if you go into the bathhouse before mincha, and what happens if you make a mistake after? So you have we have exactly a map in front of us, the havchonas, and we can go through each one. And besides that, we can now generate many questions that the mishnayos don't even deal with. You know what I'm saying? Why? Because we've taken a case, we've looked at it, analyzed it for its general structure. And what are the general categories that can come out of it? Once you have that, you've got your map. And then you go into the Mishnah, you see? And you follow it. Merchatz. A merchatz is a distracting event. A bursiki, you go into the tanning. You know, a guy's a tanner, you know?
I'm sorry, what is the difference between sapper and merchatz? I mean, we have to find...
Supper.
The sapper, the
barber. Sapper, the barber, yeah.
And the merchatz, right?
They're different activities.
Well, right, but we must.
But they're both distracting.
Is it just like different cases, or is it that, for example, by the sapper, by the barber, the chashash is that the scissors are gonna break. So basically, you're gonna start another activity, which is repairing scissors.
Correct, and that's
And by merchatz, it's
you're fainting.
But
so
it's a different category.
No, it's not a thing. It's just
of distraction.
Yeah, it's just different.
Why did the Mishnah have to say both?
Well, that's a different question. You know,
well, that only applies once we know that we really have to take a generic structure. Otherwise, we could have thought it's exercise custom about barbers.
Right.
Now that we've dissected this Mishnah properly, so now we're faced with the question. No.
It's a valid question. Why do we need all these cases? We have merchatz, we have borski. Look, the common denominator of the whole thing is all of these. The Mishnah identifies distracting activities. So the question then is this limited? Like you ever see legal documents? Limited, but you know, it was say numerated but not limited to. You know,
including but not limited to.
Yeah, it's like, you know, was it hein ve'oid? What do you call it? The lashon of the Mishnah, you know. This and others, it's not mamait, you know. But meanwhile, we have, it's just a matter of, these are distracting activities. Each one has a different reason for distraction. That's all. Sapper is the scissors. Merchas is fainting, right? What's bursiki? What's the problem with bursiki?
Tannery. You can't stop in the middle because it starts the fermenting process.
I would say it's a business office. Don't come to
once you start putting in the things, you can't stop in the middle.
Okay, so therefore, what's the? Give me the general idea.
You must finish it. Once you start it, you're hooked.
That's a description. You need a generalization. Don't describe. We know what the description is. Come on, you need to generalize.
Something that's it's a chashash, it's involvement.
We know that. That's the criteria. But what exactly is wrong with bursiki? What about bursiki?
Starting with no finishing is going to bring the loss.
What about bursiki is what makes it distracting?
Oh, then we'll get pulled in.
We know that, but why? That's not what it is.
No, by Merchot,
we don't know why
by Merchot he'll faint. By Bursiki, he'll see something needs to get done.
The loss.
What is the distracting principle of Bursiki?
Be busy.
No.
A loss.
Who?
Avoiding a loss.
No.
Discovering a loss.
No. Come on, guys. What is the distracting principle? By Sapor, it is repair.
Same as you.
Wait, by Sapor, it's repair. By Merchot, it's unconsciousness.
Production.
Here, business.
Production.
No, almost. No, like you got to zero in. Don't describe it for me. We already know the description.
Saving.
You need to exactly say what is the distracting principle.
Being nervous.
Who?
He's being nervous, anxious about
No,
it.
no,
So that
No.
we give pills.
no. Come on, Israel.
Protection.
Work.
No. Who?
Work.
What about the work?
Business.
Who?
He'll start working.
What type of a work is this? There's two types of work. There's a procedure and there's a process. What's the difference?
Wow.
Come on.
This I never heard.
A procedure is one shot. A process is a series of steps. Bursik is a process. You know, it's not a procedure where you sit down.
You can't stop it. That's describing.
It's a process.
We all
It's
know
a
the
problem.
problem is you can't
That's
stop.
why you can't stop.
Just like
Because it's a process.
Just like email.
Who?
Exactly.
No, email is a procedure. It can become a process, but inherently it's a procedure. It's a one shot. I look at my email, that's it.
That's what everybody thinks.
Well, that's the exactly right. But bursiki, tanning is a process. You can't start step 2, 1, 2, and then walk away. You're in the middle of the chemicals and all the stuff that goes. That's the problem. An activity which is a process is distracting because it's time consuming because it's a process. There you are. You hear it? Zero in. Don't fool yourself. Don't think because you used a couple of words, that's, you gotta say, what exactly is the distracting principle? And bursiki is a process. Okay, v'lo lechol. What's the achila here?
That's definitely a
it's a
process. It's a long process.
But no, it doesn't say levashel.
It depends how hungry you are also.
It doesn't say levashel.
Eating is a
Well,
process. You start like
So
It's
does this
not- it's not
include
possible,
bishul?
right?
Does this
Why?
include cooking process or just the eating process?
No,
well, if you're gonna ask a cooking, it's gonna come from bursiki, not from oichel.
If you're gonna ask who?
Cooking, it's gonna come
Yeah,
from
yeah,
bursiki.
yeah, okay.
it's enjoyment. When you start to enjoy, you don't want to stop it.
No, so what's the halacha? Why is, what does it say? What's the lolechel?
Even to the
It's more
guitar.
less become preoccupied with his meal. Okay. Yeah, okay, it's a process. It's the problem is lechol. You know, if you eat like one little cookie, I don't think it means a meal. You have to say lo lechol means a meal because a meal is a process. Eating a cookie, I mean, what do we say? You can't eat a cookie.
Sudakatana, though, they do say is
Who?
Sudakatana. They do say it's a problem.
No, but it's still a suda.
Right. No, but
Key concept is suda. Who?
Because I used to bread.
But what's the problem with the
So
suda?
then you have to ask,
Seriously,
you know?
you eat the suda katana, you sit down, you eat, you watch on
And you
bread.
want more.
Gonna go for 6 hours?
So you have to say,
Nimshach, a little wine now. A little
oh,
this
it's
now.
nimshach.
Possible.
It's
Check the fridge.
If I'm with my friends,
Oh, there's a
maybe.
difference. It's
Yeah.
for a reason.
In this country, it's not possible, but in normal country, you sit down.
Well,
you
the same
start,
way,
you know.
it's Sapper today, it's not part of the Xera. I'm saying we're not dealing with today, right? Obviously.
Yeah, people sit down, they enjoy it, and just go on. And
Open a new wine, bring another wine. What's then?
people do that wine, tea.
You go into a restaurant, tell them you want to prepay. This is what you want, I want to pay for it and bring it to me.
Think about the Middle East,
Oh no.
right? And saying, don't think about this.
Yeah.
So you have to say, v'lo lechol, eating is not a process, but what it is like email. It's a one shot if it's a small suda. But the problem with eating, it draws you more. You know, you want to eat this, oh, it tastes good, I gotta eat another cookie, another. You know, you don't just eat down one thing. You know, you can easily it's just sit down for a long time to eat because until your hunger is abated, you go on for an hour to 2 hours. You gotta sit down for a meal.
Because I was thinking maybe like it's gonna put you to sleep by your suda.
I mean, well, it's hard to say. I wouldn't say put to sleep.
Let's
Let's eat spaghetti carbohydrates. You know. But okay, you just have to say it's English word. It's mamshich. It draws you in. You know. And they v'lo because clearly dinim is what? It's time consuming, and it's very intensive. Very involved, yeah. Because you got to figure out this forest, and all of a sudden you get involved, and you forget. So you need two criteria. It has to be time consuming, and you've got to get involved, very heavily involved. Then once you're involved, obviously that's really, in many ways, that's the key. It is the involvement that makes you forget, because the mind can only do one thing at one time. So if you're in it, then that's it. Then you do this, you forget altogether about mincha. You know what I'm saying? And it's time consuming, which means that the involvement will last a long time. That's why you need both. But in the end, what makes you forget, really, is the involvement. The problem is the involvement is very lengthy. And those two criteria is what makes the distracting event. Nice.
He says, the Rabbi says, sorry,
what?
even Gemara Din.
Who?
The Rabbi says, even if you get sitting
Yeah,
on
even
Because there's even no such thing. Because they'll come up now, I found another aid. But it's not.
yeah, because the Gemara guys say, no, slug him up, and then all of a sudden you got to rethink about the whole thing all good, you know?
Yeah.
You know?
What area does that point
Which
of Bursiki that it's a process belong to?
Well,
The
it's a
fact that
process.
it's a process, that's why it's distracting? No. That's why it's involving? No.
No, that's time consuming.
It's time consuming because
Yes,
it's a process.
exactly, yeah. I mean, that's a long time. It's involving, because you got to be careful about the leather, you're talking about
Right.
expensive stuff.
So
And it's also time consuming because it's a process. So it's beautiful. Look, we have 5 different distracting, but we have the havchanas, so that once you have that, you write it down, and then you ask, okay, what other mitzvahs are time consuming? You know? And what are their distracting events? You see what I'm saying? And then we have the other 3 areas we never addressed. Are there remedies? What happens if you start before the chiyuv? What happens if you start after the chiyuv? You see? So we have a handle on this mishnah. The key is don't do fragments. We have 6 havchanas, so we have a handle on the mishnah. We're not, it's not fragments where all I have is a bunch of pieces in my hand. And that's the beauty of the clarity. You see,
Should we stop here and get
Maybe,
the
yeah.
remedies? For that?
Yeah, should stop here, really. Okay.
I'm sure this is a
Shaila is what I'm afraid that I don't know. People can make it and not make it. Well, next week is